Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Shadows of the Lost. Episode 7. Chapter 42. Alejandro Enrique had given us 17 locations. As much as I was shocked that he knew this and we had to wait for him to tell us, I was grateful he told us of his own accord. But I wasn't happy with his request. Kiera had become silent, and I understood her concern. His words rang in my mind once again. I paused as I looked at my reflection. The conversation replaying in my mind. Flashback last night. Fine, what do you want in return, pup? I asked. I want you to let me go. I don't want your help, I don't want to have anything to do with you. I just want to return to my home. He said emotionlessly. I heard the sharp intake from Kiera. She knew the shit this kid has gone through, we hadn't hidden anything from her, and I know hearing him wanting to go back there. She would always worry about him. But of course, you can go back there, but will you be okay? I mean, do you have family who can take care of you and protect you from your father? Yes. He's lying, he doesn't believe that. Her fearful voice came. It doesn't matter, he won't have a father to fear when I'm done. Deal? I said out loud. Then after I give you the location, I want you to let me go. Do you want us to take you somewhere? Kiera asked him softly. He shook his head. No, Padre will think you let me go to lure him out. I will stay hidden for a bit and make my own way home. You're only a child. Kiera's voice was full of sadness. Chances are his father would have considered that he knew the locations and may not even be there. It was obvious he didn't care for his son. I hadn't heard one response from him. I know how to survive. He replied emotionlessly. Does your father know you're aware of these locations? I don't think so. I used to try to learn as much as I could, so if he ever asked me anything, he'd be proud. He's telling the truth. Yeah. Well, he had a son who seemed to want to make him proud and he actually went and amputated his hand. He's psychotic. I know, and it's heartbreaking. Our eyes met and I reached over, giving her hand a small squeeze. Enrique, are you sure you want to go back? We can help. No. I want to go far away from all of you. I hate being here. I want to return to where I belong. He cut Kiera off, the anger and pain in his eyes clear. Fine. I'll make some provisions and you can go. Kiera's eyes widened as she looked at me, clearly not happy with my agreement. And you promise not to send guards after me to watch me? I promise. I said, and I meant it. This pup had been stalked around all his life, and if he needed someone to show him that they believed in him, then I would do it. Even if he thought it's because I didn't care, it didn't matter as long as he was happy. He's a survivor and I knew that he'll make it. So when I tell you the locations, will you let me go straight away? He repeated it as if he didn't believe that I agreed. No. I need 3 days. Why? Kiera looked at me curiously too. Because I'm not setting you loose in England. You're from Puerto Rico, right? I'm having you flown there. Both looked at me surprised, before a ghost of a smile crossed the boy's lips and he nodded. Deal. End of flashback. I sleeked my hair back, put the comb down and left the bathroom only to see Kiera in the dressing room slipping some sheer black tights on. Her back was to me, and my eyes fell on her. She tensed. I knew she could sense me watching her, but did I want to bend her over? It's rude to stare, she said softly, not even turning as she picked up a pink cami, slipping it on her. I'm sure she was doing that on purpose, and if only she knew how much I loved her. I walked towards her and just as she reached for her skirt, I gripped her, her racing heart only turning me on even more. Well, since I don't have any manners anyway, can I just say how I want to bend you over and fill up you, then watch my seed dripping out of you as you lay there unable to move from exhaustion? I growled huskily, running my hand down her stomach. She gasped, her heart pounding, but to my satisfaction she leaned into me, a soft moan leaving her lips. Alejandro, I know. She was not ready, but did I need her? I kissed her neck, right on top of her mate mark. The smell of her arousal filled the air, and feeling satisfied at her reaction, I pulled away. See you downstairs, I remarked huskily with an arrogant smirk, tapping her before I turned and left the dressing room, leaving her struggling with her emotions. I'm sure sooner or later, memory or not, she'll want me. Just like I crave for her, I was her drug too. My smirk faded away, remembering that our enemy was powerful and there was always a price. I pushed the thought away. It was a while later and Liam had just arrived as we had some important things to deal with. Plus, he had wanted to see Kiera. Currently watching Kiera meet him was interesting, to say the least. You look so different. Do I? He grinned, raising an eyebrow. You have a scar. You look so big and older. She looked him up and down. Care to share what age you think I am? I don't really know, just younger. She smiled sheepishly before hugging him tightly. He hugged her back, kissing the top of her head. So, tell me, what brings you here? She asked. Well, I wanted to see my sister, but it's regarding work as well. He kissed her forehead and she nodded, resting her head against his chest. I won't deny I felt a tad jealous that she remembered him. Westwoods. Well, if you two are done with the reunion and shit, shall we get to my office? Then you can spend the entire afternoon together after. Kiera smiled amused, moving a brow at me. Are you jealous? No, I growled. She giggled. You are. I turned, walking down the hallway and to my office. I am not doing this shit with her. I heard them both laugh quietly as they followed me. 10 minutes later, Maria, Darien, and Rayhan were in my office as well. So, that was your plan? Rayhan asked me, looking surprised. I raised an eyebrow. No, I was planning to send Maria abroad without any protection. I replied sarcastically. I knew you couldn't go because of Dulsanra, I can't either. After the Rossies, I'm sure the Westwoods are the next best thing. Darien chuckled as both siblings glared at me, and Liam raised an eyebrow as Kiera pouted. That's not nice to say, she stated. I told you I'm not nice. I shrugged, looking at Liam. He was probably the biggest alpha in size and aura I knew after me, the closest thing to the original Dimos. A little like how me being a Leekan was rare, he and Kiera were powerful too. We Westwoods are powerful too. Kiera replied, as Maria smiled at her. Too bad you're a Rossi now. Oh, she paused, realizing what I had said, and I saw her glance at her ring. Well, Rossi or Westwood, we kinda just blend into one. Both are pretty capable, and I won't deny I feel a whole lot more relaxed knowing Mom will have Liam with her. Rayhan added, running his fingers through his hair. Not only Liam, I said with a smirk. Maria was my brother's queen, and there was no way I was about to risk her life. I heard the footsteps in the hallway and smirked, taking a cigarette and lighter. Right on time. Come in, I said, through the link. Then who else? Rayhan asked, frowning slightly, just as the door opened and everyone turned to look at the two men standing there. As I said, the Westwoods are the next best thing after the Rossis, so who else but a Rossi to go to? Marcel, welcome. I smirked. Alejandro. Marcel said, giving everyone a small nod. Sitting back, I lit my cigarette as everyone in the room looked at each other surprised, but my attention was on both my nephews. Leo and Rayhan looked at each other, the hatred in Leo's eyes was unmasked, and the hostility between them was obvious. Leo. Rayhan said, his eyes sharp, his voice level. I know it's been ages since these two saw each other, and although Rayhan tried to get through to the younger boy, Leo had refused to allow him in, and with time Rayhan had backed off. Came Leo's cold, arrogant reply. I frowned, taking a long drag on my cigarette. I may be one to revel in others' problems, but yet, I didn't like this shit one bit. Not when it involves my own nephews. Cut it out. I growled. Leo raised an eyebrow, crossing his muscular arms over his chest. Dressed all in black, it only made his light blue eyes look even issier. He now scanned the room, taking a drag on the cigarette in his hand, before turning his gaze on me. When he spoke, his voice dripped with sarcasm and pure, unfiltered hatred. Well, it sure is an honor to be in a room full of the so-called elite. To what do I owe the pleasure? Rayhan, the tension in the room grew, to the point where it felt suffocating. I know he hated how I handled things years ago, but like I've said, I wouldn't do anything differently. All I can do in return is be patient with him. I hadn't seen him in a while and he looked older, bigger, and bulkier, but the hatred in those eyes of his only seemed to have grown. He held my gaze, and although I didn't submit, for the sake of peace, I broke our eye contact, turning back to Uncle Al. The rest greeted one another. I gave Marcel a nod before glancing at Uncle. So, Marcel and Liam will go with Mom? I asked, crossing my arms. Yes, they will. They'll be leaving tomorrow morning. Uncle sat forward, his eyes on Kiera, who was standing next to Liam a lot more comfortably than she had been around any of us lately. This entire situation had messed everything up for us all. We just needed to have this all sorted out. It was with me seeing Dulsanra in that state. Now Enrique has given us some locations. I'm planning on having all the ones tracked up north to see if we can find anything. It seems like this isn't even a thing for a boy, so that's a dead end. Uncle growled, frowning as he smoked his cigarette. I'll go. I said quietly, the closer we get to finding him, the closer we get to fixing everything. I heard ahem from Leo but ignored it. I wanted you to go, you are the best. Uncle nodded. But can we defeat him without knowing how to kill a Jinn? Mom asked him. We'll find that shit out, but we do need to find his location first, hence why I want it done on the low, so we can prepare. So why did you call me? Leo asked, as if he was bored just being here. I glanced at him. It was weird seeing him and Uncle together. It was almost like a mirror image with the cigarettes, the tattoos, piercings, and the coldness in their eyes. But they were different. I actually didn't think you would come, but I wanted to see if you could hack into a certain system for me. You're pretty good when it comes to computers, right? Uncle said with a smirk. I could do that, if I want. Leo replied, taking a drag on his cigarette. Is that legal? Kiera asked, her eyes wide as she stared at Uncle. Amor mio, I don't think anything we do is really legal. Kidnapping a pup, killing people, the usual shit we do out here? We're supernatural beings, we don't go by the law. He smirked arrogantly and she nodded slowly as if she had just realized this now. That's true, in your defense, you didn't want him to kidnap the boy. Liam added, wrapping his arms around her shoulders, making me smirk as Uncle glared at him. I didn't. She actually sounded relieved. Didn't matter, I was still going to do it. Uncle shot back, glaring at Liam. Loved the guy, but he did have a knack to put his foot into things without meaning to. He gave Uncle a small sheepish smirk as he ran his hand through his hair. So if that's sorted, shall we go through the details? Mom asked, waving her hand. I knew the smoke was annoying her. She would probably go shower after this. That would be a good idea. Marcel added, stepping forward. Mom gave a small smile before looking back at Uncle. I knew she found it hard looking at Marcel considering he looked almost identical to Dad. Well, the main thing you lot need to do is gather intel and see what we learn by just being there. There has to be something about this debt that will help us get the answers that this so-called king is refusing to share. It was a while later and I entered our bedroom silently, not wanting to disturb her in case she was asleep. My eyes fell on her. She hadn't realized I had entered, and it tore at my heart to hear her whimper as she hugged her body, taking deep breaths. Trying to control the pain she tried to hide from me. I walked to the bed, sitting down and scooped her into my lap. She gasped, tensing as she stared at me. Her tear-filled eyes only made the pain in my chest far worse. I knew she was trying to downplay how she felt for me and everyone else. It's going to get better, I whispered, brushing her hair back. It had lost its luster. I could tell she was in so much pain. She had lost weight. She was beginning to look a lot like how she had when I first met her, and it brought back the memories of the pain and suffering that she had experienced. I pressed my lips to hers deeply, trying my best to be gentle despite the emotions that were coursing through me. I love you, kitten. We are getting closer to fixing this, I whispered tenderly, placing another kiss on her forehead. The veins beneath her skin pulsed and she nodded, her lips quivering. She pressed them together, nodding as she curled into me, running her hand weakly down my chest. I love you, my yum yum. She smiled up at me weakly and I smirked. Just the way it should be. I whispered as she threaded her fingers into my thick locks and gently pulled my forehead to hers. She really was the sexiest, most beautiful woman to ever exist, and one that meant the world to me. Goddess, was I lucky that she was mine. Kiera mama, is it true Enrique is leaving? Catalia asked, sadness and worry in her eyes. Oh baby, who said that? I scooped her into my arms. I didn't know she knew that. I glanced at Liam, who was letting Skyla do face painting on him, or so he thought. She was doing a full face of makeup. I may have lost my memory, but in the short time I've spent with her, I realized she was not to be trusted. Strangely, when she had asked him if she could do a Spider-Man face painting on him, he agreed and sat on the floor. But he was currently turning out to look more like a clown with garish makeup. I looked back at the girl in my lap, brushing my fingers through her hair. These were my children, no matter what else was true or not, I could feel it. I kissed her forehead softly. Tell me who told you that? I repeated. Enrique said it this morning before he left the table at breakfast, that he's happy he's leaving in 3 days. She whispered. I looked into her worry-filled eyes and sighed. Yes, we are sending him somewhere safe though. He's going to be okay. But his papa will hurt him. I could sense she was getting really worked up. The pain in her eyes for the boy was breaking my heart. She had suffered too, but she was still worried about another. We won't let his father hurt him anymore. I promise. I said confidently, and I meant it. She seemed a little at ease at that and nodded. Promise. Pinky promise. I vowed, raising my pinky finger. She giggled as we sealed our pinky promise. I trust Mama and Daddy. Uncle, stop scrunching your eye. Skyla scolded. Princess, you poked me twice. He replied. Oh, don't be a baby, you're such a scaredy puppy. I felt sorry for him, but he seemed to be used to the treatment, trying not to flinch as Skyla dabbed bright purple to his lids and then added some glitter. My eyes widened as I realized that was nail polish. Skyla, that's not for eyes. I exclaimed, startled. But it's more glittery. She responded, glancing at me. But it's not good for eyes. I repeated. He'll heal if it gets in his eyes. Don't worry, Mama. She reassured me with a sly smile. Well, if I had any doubt that Alejandro wasn't my mate, it was gone. She had the same wicked smile as her father. Father. My stomach fluttered, remembering our moment earlier on. Goddess, he was a dangerous temptation. Glitter? But Spider-Man has no glitter. What are you doing, Sky? Liam asked, opening his eyes suspiciously. Just trust me. He wasn't going to fall for that, was he? Okay, he did. Wow. Dante snickered and I looked over to where he was sitting with Aaron, who was watching something on the tablet. Uncle, I would think you would have learned from living with Azura that you should not trust girls. Too, I'm trusting you, Skyla. Go less on the glitter, Liam warned, opening his eyes a little. I felt sorry for him when he was going to have to remove that nail varnish from his eyes. Didn't he realize by the smell what it was, or wasn't he worried? My poor simple brother. Uncle, you look pretty. Catalia added before she patted my arm. Mama, before Enrique leaves, will you ask him to talk to me? Please. My stomach twisted. I didn't miss how he seemed to get angry when he saw her or how he ignored her, and it broke my heart. I understood she wanted to see him, but would he just be hurtful to her? Looking into those dark eyes full of sadness, I knew I had to try. I cupped her face and nodded. Okay, my little angel, I will try. I promised, placing a soft kiss on her forehead. Can you ask him soon? The need to talk to him, the desperation in her eyes, was so obvious that I nodded. Okay. I'll go ask him now. Thank you, Mama. The sound of crying came from the hallway. Sienna. I stood up, rushing out, only to see the boy Leo, or more like mini Alejandro, crouched down as he picked up the 1-year-old who had tumbled over. It seemed all the Rossis were easily noticeable, they had their similarities. You should be watching her, he said coldly, glancing at Claire who had hurried out of the playroom after the little girl. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Claire. I smiled gently, knowing she looked terrified. Leo looked at the little girl who watched him, her eyes wide with terror. Who is she? He asked me, flicking a strand of her curls out of her face and raising his eyebrows questioningly at her, only making her lips quiver. She's my daughter. Leo and I both turned, seeing Rayhan standing on the stairs. His eyes were sharp as he stared at his cousin. Kiara Leo's eyes seemed to turn even colder as he glanced at the girl in his arms. Your daughter, a dangerous smirk crossed his face, making my own heart race. Come here, Si. Rayhan came down the stairs, walking towards Leo, only for the younger man to step back and hold up a finger warningly. What's the rush? Scared I'll hurt her. I guess she is in my hold, Leo. Rayhan's voice was menacing and cold, his eyes flashing green as he glared at his cousin in a clear warning. What was wrong with them? The thick tension in the air was scaring me. What do I do? Suddenly, Leo threw the girl in the air, making me gasp. Although it was only a foot in the air, it was obvious he was trying to rile Rayhan up. Rayhan lunged to catch her, but Leo pushed him back, catching the girl, who now burst into tears. It hadn't been a high throw, but it was obvious she was terrified and that Leo was taunting Rayhan. Alejandro. We need you at the mansion. Now. I called through the link, unsure what else to do. Rayhan hissed, grabbing his daughter from Leo's arms and shoving the younger man back roughly. This is not a joke. Coming. I was relieved Alejandro didn't question me and was coming. I heard footsteps behind me only to see Liam, Catalia, and Skyla approaching. Go inside, girls. I commanded, wondering if I should take the crying child from Rayhan, as Leo laughed sadistically. Both girls hesitated before Skyla nodded and pulled Catalia away. Don't worry, unlike you, I don't target the innocent. Leo replied coldly, his laughter vanishing as he stared at Rayhan with pure hatred. Don't ever think you can do that again. Touch my kids one more time and I will. And you will what? If you want to kill me, you need to do it now whilst I'm still wolfless, 'cause once I shift, he left his threat hanging, raising his arms as if inviting Rayhan to attack him. Mustering my courage together, I hurried over, hoping Rayhan trusted me and took the crying child from his arms. To my surprise, he let her go and I stroked her hair backing away from the two men. There, princess, it's going to be okay, I whispered, hurrying back to where Liam stood with a face full of makeup as he watched the two men sharply. Come to think of it, his eyes weren't the shade I remembered, weren't they meant to be cerulean blue? Why were they that dark, magnetic blue? And that scar? Just a fake, he isn't the real Liam. A voice whispered in my head, making my heart thunder as I pushed the terrifying through away. Don't try me, Leo. The front door slammed open. What is going on? Alejandro's cold voice came, and I had never been more relieved to see him. He stood at the front door, his large frame filling it with his beta Darien just behind him. Nothing at all. Leo smirked. Either he leaves from here or I do. I'm not keeping my family here unless he's gone. Rayhan's voice was calm, yet the anger in it sent a chill down my spine. What's this, making Alejandro choose between blood? Well, that's not a hard choice, of course he'll choose the son of the oh-so-perfect Rafael Rossi. Leo taunted. What happened? Alejandro repeated, his eyes simmering red, ignoring Leo's remark. Your favorite will fill you in, whilst I'll make it easier for you and leave. You don't need to pretend to care. Leo replied, ignoring Alejandro. I rocked the girl in my arm, relieved she had calmed down, her tiny heartbeat still rapid. Leo. Marcel's voice came from behind Alejandro and Darien. Come dad, grovel at their feet. Leo shot back before pushing past Alejandro roughly. I won't be joining you. I looked at Liam, who if the situation hadn't been so dire would have made me giggle. He looked concerned and when I turned to Alejandro, I didn't miss the look of pain and torment in his eyes. The urge to go over to him almost took over, but what was I meant to say? How about we sit down and talk this shit out? He suggested now, turning to glance at his nephew, who was almost out the door. How about you deal with that? Leo countered, moving a brow towards the ceiling. He turned, throwing something incredibly fast, aiming it at the lighting fixture on the ceiling. I saw the flash of silver and I quickly turned my back, my every instinct telling me to protect the child in my arm just as the entire thing came crashing down with a huge clang, the glass shattering. I felt a surge of aura surround me and looked up to see Liam had raised some sort of blue force field, stopping any of the glass from touching me. Once again, that sliver of doubt flittered through me. Was this Liam? I looked around at the hall, the anger in Rayhan's eyes, the way Alejandro was frowning, the look on Marcel's face. The family had appeared so perfect, but it was clear it wasn't. Once again, the terrifying doubt that this was all an illusion overcame me. I didn't realize I had stepped back until Alejandro called me. Amor mio, are you okay? My eyes snapped up to him and I nodded. Just then, Rayhan came over, taking his daughter from me. Ray, a word. Alejandro called after him as he made to go upstairs. Not right now, came his quiet yet dangerous reply. Alejandro ran his hand through his hair and looked at Liam, sighing in frustration. You meant to be? He asked, and I wasn't able to stop the giggle. Spider-Man. Liam replied with a small sheepish smile. You mean Glitterman or some shit? Alejandro raised an eyebrow, whilst Darien hid a smirk. Yeah, Sky got a little carried away. Liam bunched his shirt up and began wiping his face, flinching when he saw the purple and pink makeup transferred onto it. Oh, if only he saw the nail polish. Some was in his eyebrows too. Alejandro shook his head. I will never get how you let these girls walk all over you. I think you do too, Darien remarked, earning a glare from Alejandro, who now turned to Marcel. Don't let it bother you, they're just kids, they'll argue and shit all the time. Come on, I'll get Claire to bring us something to drink, he said, slapping his brother's shoulder. It's not a light matter, Alejandro. He must have done something to trigger Rayhan like that. Marcel mused gravely. Yeah, Alejandro agreed. All eyes turned on me, and I felt a rush of nervousness as Alejandro approached me, reminding me of a predator advancing on his prey. Care to share what exactly went down, amor mio? I looked at the other three men. Liam gave me a small encouraging smile. Pushing that niggling doubt regarding him away, I turned to Alejandro, taking a deep breath, ready to tell them what had happened. It was later in the day. I finally managed to get a moment alone and I was planning on speaking to Enrique as I had promised Catalia. Alejandro's mood had darkened when he learned that Leo had taunted Rayhan by throwing his daughter up in the air, even though it was clear he had no intention of harming her, yet he had scared her and succeeded in riling Rayhan up. Marcel had been apologetic, but Alejandro had told him not to blame himself. Maria had tried to smooth things over. I felt dreadful for saying what happened in front of him. I didn't know he'd feel so guilty. Rayhan had avoided everyone. His mother said to give him some space. My own doubt had eased. I could sense when someone lied and I had to remember Alejandro had not lied to me. Not once had he hid anything from me or had I sensed him lying. I decided I would tell him about the voice I had heard in my head later. I knocked on the door to Enrique's bedroom before opening the door and stepping inside. The boy was standing by the window, his arms behind his back, head straight up and shoulders squared. My heart ached for him. When his hazel eyes met mine, all I could see was a child who had suffered so much. Hey! I said, smiling softly as I entered, leaving the door slightly ajar. Can I help you, Queen Luna? He asked, his voice sounding dead. Must he leave? Couldn't I keep him and take care of him? He needed to be loved and nurtured. I smiled, not wanting him to notice how I was feeling, knowing he hated pity. I have actually come with a request today. I explained gently, taking a seat at the edge of the bed. He waited for me to speak. I looked up at him. It's about Catalia. Instantly a frown flashed on his face. What now? Before you leave, will you talk to her? His anger seemed to rise and he turned away from me, his heart beating fast as he glared out of the window. No. I never want to see her or speak to her ever again. Please? Enrique, she really just wants to speak to you, just once. I pleaded. Will you force me to speak to her? He asked icily. I shook my head, no, but I'm begging you, as a mother. Please, just speak to her once. You won't see each other again. Do you think you could find it inside of you to fulfill her one wish? I whispered, joining my hands together in front of me. A sudden overwhelming sense of déjà vu filled me and I brushed it away. I hate her. He hissed. If she comes before me, I won't be nice to her, so it's your choice. I felt a sharp pang of pain, but I nodded. I couldn't force him to. Okay. Could you at least be patient with her? I asked gently. I can't promise anything. The chica should realize we are not friends. I don't even want to see her. She's just a useless chica, one who annoys me. Luna, Princess Catalia, is outside. My heart thudded as I closed my eyes. I hadn't sensed her. Okay, okay, I will let her make the decision. I replied defeated, standing up. Thank you. I left the room, shutting the door after me just in time to see her little head of sandy brown hair vanish around the corner. I closed my eyes, leaning against the wall, not even noticing the guards who stood there. The only thought in my head was that she had heard his every word. Knowing that it only broke her pure little heart a little more. Catalia, I ran down the stairs quickly before Mama caught me listening, my tears spilling down my cheeks. Why did Enrique hate me so much? Was it because his papa took his hand off because of me? I clamped my hand over my mouth, rounding the corner as I stifled a sob, only to knock into Daddy and almost fall back. I got to my feet, ready to run away when he caught hold of my arms, kneeling down in front of me. What's wrong, Princess? I shook my head, flinging my arms around his neck and sobbing into his arms. He picked me up and I clung to him. I know Dante calls me a baby when Daddy carries me, but I'm sad. It's going to be okay. He stroked my hair, and I closed my eyes, inhaling his smell. Tell me what happened. Safe. I was safe with Daddy. I slowly moved back, staring at him. I needed to be brave and strong. Nothing, Daddy, I'm a brave girl. I whispered, brushing away my tears with one hand. My girl is brave. Always remember that. I nodded, playing with the chains around his neck. Yes. I will. And I will talk to Enrique, even if he doesn't want to talk to me. I will make him see me because this was my last chance to thank him and say goodbye. Forever. Dinner was over, everyone usually went to the living room and Enrique would go to his room, not wanting to spend time with us. Rayhan was still angry, over what happened earlier with Leo I think, so everyone was very quiet. I pretended to play in the playroom with Sky, Sienna, and Aaron, but I could hear Uncle Marcel asking Enrique about Puerto Rico in the entrance hall. That's where Enrique was from. I took the chance to sneak away when Clara wasn't looking. They never noticed when I snuck away because they couldn't hear me. I needed to go before Enrique. I quietly made my way upstairs and hurried to my room to grab the present I had made him. I then ran down the hall and slipped into Enrique's room before he came up. Otherwise, the guards would find out I was there. They only guarded the room when Enrique was in it. I looked around the room, panicking. Where do I hide? I didn't ask Mama about talking to him because I heard what he said earlier. If I was stubborn and said I wanted to talk to him, it would only hurt Mama even more because she would stay with me, and I know Enrique was going to be angry. I heard the door handle turn and hurried into the bathroom, clutching my present to my heart. I heard him shut the door and sigh. Should I go out? I peeped through the gap, watching Enrique walk over to the window and stare out at the moon. He looked sad. The angry face he makes wasn't there. It made me unhappy that he looked so lonely and sad. He turned, glancing towards the bathroom door. I quickly hid behind it, my heart racing. I heard him approaching and then he pushed the door open, roughly stepping into the bathroom and looking around. This was my chance. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door shut just when he turned to look behind the door. He became so angry when he saw me and was about to grab the door handle, but I stood in front of it, blocking his way. Please don't ignore me. I pleaded softly. Please. What do you want? He frowned, crossing his arms. My heart ached, as I looked at my shoes. I wanted to say I'm happy you are going to be safe. I hurry up. He snapped, making me jump. Don't cry. Oh okay. I'm sorry you suffered because of me. If I could turn back time, I wouldn't have allowed you to bring me food. I wouldn't have let you get hurt. I wish if I could turn back time, I wish I had never met you. He hissed, his anger burning in his eyes. I nodded. I know. I whispered. It hurt. The thing is, we can't change the past, but I can look to the future. Stay away from me. I hate you. I hate the fact that I ever met you. You were nothing but a bad mistake. You cost me my entire future. I hate you. I should have left you to die. He shouted. My lips quivered, but I simply nodded, agreeing to his every word. He was right. It should have been me who lost my hand, not him. It was my fault. If I could give my hand, I would. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I whispered. I wish I could make it up to you. If you want to make it up to me, don't ever talk to me again, because talking to you makes it hurt even more. You destroyed everything, don't you get it? Seeing you hurts me. I hate remembering what happened, because of you. I flinched, brushing my tears away as I stared at him. If this was what he wanted, then I would do that. The little pouch with the crystal necklace I had made almost slipped from my fingertips. Okay, I promise that I will never speak to you again, I whispered. Then leave me alone now. He hissed. I swallowed, staring at my little pouch, but I wasn't brave enough to give it to him. Get out! I jumped, dropping the pouch and pulling open the door. I fled before my tears fell. I rushed from the room, ignoring the guards who called out to me. I just wanted to be alone. I reached my bedroom and rushed inside, curling up on my bed and sobbing quietly. I'm so sorry, Enrique, for ruining your life. I'm not sure when Skyla came and saw me crying or when Mama came and held me. All I remember is Enrique screaming at me to get out. All I had to remember him by was that little piece of torn fabric. I will always keep that. Net the pain had become stronger. I felt strange. It was hard to breathe. It hurt, but I also couldn't feel anything else either. What was happening to me? Alejandro I had not been expecting caught to sneak into his room and try to talk to him. Whatever he said to her had made her cry for hours. Only about 10 minutes ago did Kiara say she had calmed down and fallen asleep. As much as I wanted to sort the pup out for upsetting her, it was complicated. Her infatuation with him worried me too. Once gone, it was going to be easier. She needed to get over her guilt, and the best way was for her to forget him. They both needed to heal, and time would do that. More like I hoped it would. I now looked at him in front of me. He was smart, that was for sure. Want to say something? Leo asked, as he clicked away at the keyboard. He had spent the last 2 hours hooking up several screens to his own laptop, which he had brought along. I raised an eyebrow at the image of the busted woman in a barely there bikini, that was covering his entire screen. XC, isn't she? He asked. Far from it. I replied. Was hot about her? She was a fake silicon walking plastic doll. I'm sure you wouldn't say that if you were single. He gave me a humorless smirk before he pulled up some windows. Kids. I do want to say something actually. What you did to Sienna. You don't mess with kids. Do that shit again and I won't just stand by. I growled, resisting the urge to smack his head. I tossed her up, just like I'd do any of the kids back home. I wasn't going to hurt her. He cast me a scathing look, his icy blue eyes rolling irritatingly. Yeah? But you did it to annoy Rayhan off. It was wrong to use a pup like that. She's one. Yeah, I did, and you need to allow him to explain his reasons, Leo. I don't need to allow him shit. The wanker thinks he's some sort of big shot. He sneered, sitting back as he carried on working. If you want me to do this, I need you to stop bothering me. He glanced up at me and I knew he was at the edge of snapping. Hatred and bitterness won't get you far. We all make mistakes, but sometimes try to understand what the cause behind those actions are. I could say the same. His voice was quiet and dangerously level now, and I could feel the anger rising from him. I ran my hand through my hair. How do I tell him what Dulsanra had been through? I had seen some of her memories and they made me sick. The thing is, Leo refused to listen. One day, you'll realize what he did. When you find your mate and realize that you'd destroy the world for her, that's when you'll realize that he didn't do anything wrong. I saw some of her memories, what she suffered. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I explained quietly. He didn't react, and I didn't wait for a reply, knowing I wouldn't get one, leaving him to do his job but mind linking 2 of my men to keep an eye on him. I was not having him walk around the pack alone, not after that stunt he had pulled with Sienna. I returned to the mansion that was silent. The hallway had been cleaned up and someone would fix the light tomorrow. I had examined the weapon he had used, very thin and extremely sharp. Something like this could slice through someone's neck if thrown with enough force. Leo would shift soon when he turned 18, and I didn't want to think of the chances that the darkness within him might grow. I headed to my room, needing Kiera. I just wanted to hold her and kiss her senseless. She was the only thing that kept me sane. The anger I was feeling inside towards this Crimson King and Jin was only growing with every passing day. I entered our bedroom, but she wasn't there. I glanced around before deciding to take a shower first. I entered the bathroom, the smell of her shampoo and body wash lingering. I stripped, stepping into the shower that was still wet. "Where are you?" I asked her. Since she had showered, it meant that she had been in here not long ago. I was making us some chocolate," came her reply. I smirked. Sounds good. Although the only thing that smelt of chocolate that I wanted was her. She was all that I wanted to get me off. I heard the bedroom door open, and then the key turned in the lock. I smirked, a thought coming to me. I finished showering quickly, grabbing a towel, but instead of wrapping it around me, I quickly wiped myself down, glancing down at my hard-on. I was probably going to scare out of her. But who cares? I left the bathroom, towel in hand. I smirked, spotting her bent over as she plugged her phone into the charger. To my surprise, she was clad in a black silk nightgown and, from the way she was bent over, was she trying to do to me? Nice view. She turned startled, tugging at the hem of her gown. Her eyes flew open when they landed on my body. I tilted my head smirking as I stood in front of her. I heard her breath hitch as her gaze schemed my body. What's wrong, amor mio? I asked, walking towards her. Nothing at all. She replied defiantly, despite her pounding heart and the telltale sign that I was getting to her when she pressed her thighs together. Really? Because seeing you like this is turning me on, I murmured huskily, taking hold of her chin just as I let down the barrier on my emotions. Letting her feel exactly how I was feeling. How much I wanted to her and how much she meant to me. She gasped, almost stumbling backwards if I didn't catch her. Alejandro, she whispered shakily, her eyes widening when she felt me against her through the towel between us. Yeah, is the right term, baby. Her heart was pounding, so I reined in my own storm of emotions, not wanting them to influence her. If she wanted me, I wanted it to be of her own accord. I looked into the beautiful eyes of my queen and just then the scent of her arousal filled the air, making my eyes simmer red. The hunger and desire within me threatened to unleash themselves. Wait. There's something I need to tell you first. She whispered, her hand going to my shoulder, her heart thundering as she looked up into my eyes. It was taking my all not to kiss her right now. What is it? Earlier, I heard a voice in my head. And just like that, my mood changed. The harsh reality of what she had just said hit me like a freight train. Kiera, we had been talking for the last 20 minutes. He had explained everything about Liam to me, and now I felt stupid for even assuming that it wasn't him. However, the most distracting thing was that he was sitting on the bed with the towel loosely draped over his manhood. It was so distracting, and I was doing my best not to stare. He was a work of art, one covered with so many tattoos that I wanted to trace my finger over every single one. How low did they go? My cheeks flushed and I didn't miss the smirk on his face, almost as if he knew what I was thinking. He raised one leg slightly, resting his arm on it, making my attention instantly go to his muscular thigh. Goddess, this man was made to sin. I scanned the room instead, brushing my fingers through my hair, feeling a little jittery. Any more questions, amor mio? He asked. I looked into his dark eyes and shook my head, before staring at his chest, where I realized my name was tattooed. When did you get that? I asked, staring at the words. My Queen Kiera, ruler of my heart, body, and soul. When Dante was just a pup, I got his name on my wrist and the girls' names on the other. He held his arms out and I leaned forward taking a look. Indeed, on one wrist it read Dante alongside numerous other tattoos, and on the other arm, he had both girls, with Skyla's name just above Catalia's. He had been nothing but truthful, and I believed him. I nodded, reaching over and tracing my finger over my name on his chest, trying to ignore the incredible sparks that rushed through me at our touch. What worries me is the strong doubt that fills me so quickly that all logic seems to fly out the window. I mused, glancing up at his glowing red eyes staring back at me. Then next time when that shit happens, mind link me straight up, he said, stretching his muscled arm and running his fingers through his hair. My gaze fell to the towel. Goddess. So, how about you give in to your temptation and remove this towel? We both know you want to. My eyes widened, and if I wasn't red before, my face was absolutely heated up now. I tossed my hair, swallowing hard. I do not. I lied. I don't need your ability to know you're lying. So how about you come here, and I'll give you a taster of exactly how we happy. He didn't wait for a reply. Aren't you getting a little ahead? I asked, although my entire body and my mind were saying to just kiss him. Who cares? He murmured, did I care? I looked into that handsome face. No one looked as the man before me. With consequences. Not me. I whispered, locking my arms around his neck. I should have kissed him the moment I woke up and saw him. This felt so. There were no words to describe the intense pleasure that consumed me. I whimpered, my entire body aching for more. His kiss was rough, passionate, and fueled with a hunger. Dominating me entirely, I kissed him back with equal passion and desire. Not holding back the moan that left my lips, arching my back, Alejandro. I whimpered through the link as his tongue plunged into my mouth. It felt natural. Our bodies moved together, as one. He let go of my hair and my stomach knotted as he began to undo the belt on my gown. I know we have been together, but this. I gasped for air, trying to avoid the hammering in my chest when he yanked me close and kissed me on my neck. My eyes flew open and I felt a flare of heat rush through me. I dug my nails into Alejandro's shoulders, breathing hard. What was going on? Don't trust him. I gasped and walked away from him as if I had been burned. Amor mio, the voice. I whispered, my heart thundering as I stared at him. His eyes narrowed and I could feel his anger. It's trying to keep us apart, his anger was palpable, and I could feel it through the bond too. He wasn't wrong. My instincts were telling me one thing, and this voice was telling me another. Then how about we ignore it, and you want me so I can't focus on anything but you? I whispered, getting onto my knees. I ran my hand through my hair enjoying his attention on me. Sounds like a good plan. He growled, making my heart knot with anticipation. Then drop the towel, my king, and show me exactly what I'm missing. I whispered, crawling towards him just as he picked up the towel and tossed it to the ground right next to my discarded gown. Goddess, I feel like I was in heaven. How does one forget something like this? I wanted to taste him, but he was in control. That's it, baby girl, enjoy it. He looked up at me, Alejandro. Relax. You've had a lot more than a finger up there. He whispered in my ear. Goddess, it felt so good. I didn't hold back the cries of pleasure. I loved it. So good to know he was enjoying this just as much. The sounds of skin against skin and our breathless sounds of pleasure filled the room. Just when I felt myself nearing once more, he sped up chasing his own release. I felt something in my mind once more, but this time it seemed to be struggling to make its presence known. What is it? Alejandro breathed, me harder. Mark me. I commanded, my heart pounding, feeling a searing pain in my head. The urge to rip away from Alejandro was consuming me, and the moment I spoke those words, it only grew. Now. I whimpered. He didn't argue, biting into my neck right on top of the mark that already adorned my neck. I screamed as a storm of sensations filled me. His release matched mine. But alongside it, I felt the pleasure from my neck wash through me like a wave of pure water, bathing my mind in a coolness, and with it I felt as if something inside of me snapped. My eyes flew open, my head feeling lighter as I stared at him the moment he moved back, breathing hard. What happened? He asked. I think you marking me shut that voice out, but time will tell, I whispered. He frowned, before exhaling, and pressing his forehead against mine. Amor mio, well. I was thinking, since I've forgotten a lot, yet. Why don't you show me what else you can do? I blinked coquettishly, running my fingers into his hair. That's my girl. He growled, grabbing my neck as his lips claimed mine once again. Alejandro, I loved it. There was not a part of her that I hadn't left my mark. Seems like I've reawakened the goddess within you. I murmured, kissing those sore lips of hers. She kissed me back, staring up at me with desired eyes. One that can't resist you. She whispered, placing a kiss on my neck just as I can't resist you, but if I want you one more time, I don't think you'll be able to hold up. I murmured. She smiled, closing her eyes and resting her head back against me. I will get my memories back, won't I? She asked after a moment. Yeah, you will. And I meant it. I had left her to sleep whilst I went to train. Darien had taken photos of the pup for a fake passport. I was currently with Leo, who had spent the night at headquarters. So, got anything? Maybe. He said, dropping his legs to the floor and clicking something on his laptop. As far as it comes to the Escara name, there's plenty of shit. They aren't a pack with the cleanest record in businesses, it may involve drugs and shit. Anyhow, something else interesting did actually come up, but I don't know if it is of any use. He threw a knife up in the air, catching it between his teeth, before sitting forward and pulling up a few files. What is that? He placed the knife into the side of his boot. How many weapons did he carry? The Escaras had dealings with a certain company called Lupo 12 Rossi over 100 years ago. Not sure if it rings any bell, but it's a coincidence, ain't it? I frowned, bending down. I had not heard of any such company, but it was too much to be a coincidence. Lupo. That's not a coincidence. Yeah, the Rossis are originally from Italy, correct? Yeah, obviously, it was our great-great-grandfather who moved here after his pack was destroyed or some shit. So how many years ago on estimate would you say? Over 150. Would you be able to find anything about that company? Already did. There's nothing on the public domain, but if you dig further and get past some security systems, you will find that it was an arms company that was actually funding the Italian mafia or some shit. Then enter the Escara enterprise. Apparently there was a dealing and the Escara bought out the Lupo 12 Rossi. Then listen to this. This all happened around 140 years back. Around the time the Rossis moved to England, he was smart, got to give him that. I scanned the documents, frowning. So something had gone down between our ancestors and the Escaras, something that made the Rossis leave Italy and set up here. I don't get why they're saying there's a debt. Unless, Leo ran his fingers through his hair, sitting forward and picking up a pack of cigarettes and a lighter. Want one? Sure. Ain't you a tad young for this shit? I asked, allowing him to light my cigarette. Ain't you a few years late to comment on this shit? He countered, copying my tone but sounding 10 times worse. He smirked and I narrowed my eyes. He sure knew what I was thinking. He lit his own cigarette while staring at the screen. Unless what? I asked, glancing back at the screen. Unless the Rossis did something to the Escaras regarding that takeover, he had a point. Why else did they run? You may be onto something. Well, your dad and Maria are going, we'll see if they find anything from there. If this is the case, then the Rossis must have done something to have made the family forever remember it. But what exactly? Pay the debt, buy the blood, what else is new? The Rossis just take whatever they want, right? His voice was cold and bitter. I sighed. Look kid, I know the Rossis have done shit, the past is gone, but we can pave the future. He shook his head. Nothing can change, because no matter how much time passes, there's still discrimination in every aspect of life. We say we want to be open-minded, but isn't it the same? Racism, homophobia, and prejudice still exist. We are no different, we are still ranked, not only by blood but by packs. We have the elite packs at the top, such as the Black Storm, the Nightwalkers, and the Blood Moon. Then we have the influential packs, the standard packs, the weak packs, and then right at the bottom, we have the Sanguine pack. Rogues. I'm right, aren't I? That's not true, Leo. The Sanguine pack is not it. It is not because we haven't progressed, or the fact that we aren't strong enough, but because we are rogues. We're rogues. I corrected. We still are. A rogue pack, a pack of outcasts among regular packs. He stood up and looked me in the eye. We won't ever agree on this, and I don't give a shit. Whilst you were enjoying your long night, he glanced at my neck pointedly, before smirking humorlessly. I pulled up anything I could on the Escara and Rossi interactions, it's all there, plus some addresses Dad can use in Puerto Rico. So whether the king loves it or not, I'm out. He tossed the memory stick he removed from his laptop at me and snapping the laptop shut, walking out the door smoking his cigarette. I sighed heavily. He was a smart kid. I just hated seeing the resentment within him. My phone rang, and I pulled it out of my pocket. Yeah. I answered, seeing whose number it was. I hope you have an answer. Oh, I do. I don't think you will like it. Try me. Janina sighed heavily. Well, to kill a djinn. You need the blood of 666 virgins coating a blade made of pure iron. I scoffed. Was she for real? Virgins. Yes, if even one isn't a virgin, it can ruin the entire thing. We just need about a syringe worth from each, combine them, and then dip the iron blade into it. That's it. It's not so easy. Sounds pretty easy to me. Now we just find virgins willing to give blood. They must all have hit puberty. It won't be easy. No shit, Sherlock. Finding 10 virgins is hard and you're asking me to find over 600. You wanted answers, I found you the answers. Now listen carefully. There's more. The price. You mean the consequences of killing a jinn? Yes. The cost is, she hesitated, and I couldn't deny I waited with bated breath for her next words. Alejandro, the weight of Janina's words lingered in my mind. The price to pay. Well, obviously, it wasn't going to be a walk in the park, but I did hope it wouldn't come to this shit. Well, I'll deal with that when the time comes. But for now, how do I find 666 virgins? Do I go round asking all the teens in the pack? Nah, I'll come off like a creep. This was messed up. I took a drag on the cigarette as I walked out of headquarters, spotting Leo leaning against the wall, as 2 young she-wolves talked to him. He didn't seem to mind the attention, although he wasn't giving them his full attention, but I guess girls loved bad boys. What are the chances he was a virgin? I could ask him though, won't be too odd. Right? The girls saw me approaching and bowing their heads, left quickly. Pups. So, are you a virgin? The girls gasped from behind me as I looked at Leo, waiting for a reply. He gave me a withering glare, clearly annoyed that I asked that. Shame, I don't really care. That got his attention, glancing at me sharply and raising an eyebrow. Do I look like a virgin to you? He asked coldly. Don't know, you might be all talk or some shit. Putting on a bad boy front or something. He looked at me as if I had grown an extra head, and I don't blame him. This conversation was weird. Although it's none of your business, no, I'm not a virgin, but at least now I know that you were at my age. I sure wasn't. Really? You seem to have been the most insecure around, full of self-loathing. He mocked. Not that my life is your business, he scoffed. But mine is yours? Ah yeah, the double standards, right? I sighed. Why did he have to do this every time? No, actually it's regarding the situation. I glanced around, making sure we were actually alone this time. I wasn't going to let him just carry on with that assumption. I need the blood of 666 virgins who have hit puberty to defeat the someone. Leo raised an eyebrow, before snickering. That's crazy. Where will you find that shit? I mean, if it was just blood, you could have gone around and taken it from all the pups. But resorting to asking an almost 18-year-old? Yeah, you won't have any luck. I know, but I still wanted to try my luck. I had hoped that one Rossi had kept it in his pants. I grumbled. This was going to be hard. Well, do what you're best at, commanding others. Use your alpha command on your pack to have all virgins step forward. Not waiting for a reply, he walked off. I frowned, I know he meant it in a mocking way, but if done properly, I could use the command to make sure that they were indeed virgins, or I could ask Rayhana for help. That might actually work. I guess I needed to hit the archives, and see if I could find anything about the history of when the Black Storm Pack was formed. Raphael had given me most of the archives, along with old history books and stuff. I had just stored them. If not here, then the ones that remained at Black Storm may have something. It was much later, and I was in the archive vault. Lola, Rayhan's beta, was searching the archives over at his pack, but so far neither of us had found shit. The sound of heels reached my ears. I didn't need to turn or smell who it was to know it was my queen. Her scent was strongly mixed with mine thanks to the intense night. I turned as she knocked on the open door. Hey! She smiled, her cheeks flushed a gorgeous pink. Hey! Dressed in a black long-sleeved fitted dress and black sheer tights, I knew it was to hide the mess I had made. Her hair was left open and she was wearing makeup. On her feet, she wore red heels that matched the red on her lips. Can I come in? You don't need to ask for permission, amor mio. She smiled and walked over, holding out the large mug of coffee. I thought you might want a drink, she said with a pout, her heart racing as she looked away from my intense gaze. I smirked. The only thing I want is you. I placed the book down, snaking an arm around her waist and bending down, kissing her deeply. Her breath hitched before she kissed me back slowly, whimpering slightly. I could do her all over again, but I had to give her a break and find these answers too. Forcing myself back, I looked her over, my eyes lingering on her tits. Thanks for the coffee. I took it from her grip, amused that she was blushing despite being naughty all night long. What are we looking for? I could help, she suggested, ruffling her long locks. We're looking for when the Black Storm Pack was founded and anything to do with events that took place around 150 years ago. I replied. Nodding, she turned to the shelves, walking to the end and began looking at the book names. I'm glad to have her back. Even if she didn't have her memory of us, at least we had come together once again. Another half an hour passed, and the dust was annoying me off. We still hadn't found any answers. Uncle, it's R.I. I turned to see Rayhan holding his phone out. There was no connection in here, so I strode over to him. Nothing from Lola. Not yet, but R.I. was adamant to talk to you. Rayhan replied, but it was obvious he wasn't impressed. Oh, stop acting like I'm wasting your time, I'm offended. Rayhana's voice came. I took the phone from Rayhan, looking at the screen where Rayhana was seated on a sofa, giving me a small wave. What do you want? That's not a nice way to greet me, uncle, especially when I'm here with information. She replied, rolling her eyes as she admired her nails. But if you don't want to know, fine, I have better things to do with my time. All right, don't be a diva. What do you know? Ask nicely. She replied, smirking. This woman. Chris appeared from behind, placing his hands on her shoulders, and she tilted her head back to kiss him. I'm covered in dust, and I'm annoyed. Spill. I growled. Please. R.I. persisted. Be nice. Kiera whispered. Her words made my heart race. Be nice. Something she always said to me. Turning back to the screen, I gave Rayhana a cold glare. Please. I growled, making Rayhan smirk. Well, that wasn't so hard, was it? This woman was hard work. Kiara's presence next to me was calming. What do you know, Rayhana? Rayhan asked. I heard from Chris, who heard from Lola, that you were looking for the founding history of the Black Storm. Well, you are in luck, Dad made me study it all. You know the history of the Rossis settling in England? Yes, as well as the controversial reasoning. Although I don't know how true it is. She replied. The Rossis' origins are from Italy. Alfonso Rossi was son of D'Angelo Rossi, the alpha of the Lupo Nero pack. A pack that was massacred by an enemy pack. I frowned. I knew we didn't have any other family out there, but I didn't really care to research either. What enemy pack? It didn't actually say, just that D'Angelo Rossi had taken the alpha's daughter and claimed her as his own, making their enmity grow. She was one of the 5 women he had claimed over time. His original mate gave birth to a son and daughter, then the next 2 women he ended up killing in anger within months of taking them as his mistresses. His mate committed suicide, and he then took another chosen mate. This woman was Alfonso's mother. However, he also ended up taking her life. It's said that with each passing woman, he became more and more insane. D'Angelo then saw a woman at a pack meeting and, taking an interest in her, took her by force, making her his 5th woman, hence starting a war between the 2 packs. The Lupo Nero pack managed to win the battle and destroy the other pack, but it cost them far too much. Alfonso was one of the rare survivors along with his half-brother, the new Alpha. I frowned, as Rayhana took a deep breath, fanning her face. I need a drink, my throat is dry. Seriously, this woman. Did she take anything seriously? Remembering her pregnancy, I decided not to say anything. I was becoming soft. How did that happen? She smiled, holding an iced drink in her hand that she had picked up from the table, and took a sip. Anyway, the woman D'Angelo had taken as a mate, her brother's mate was from abroad and he had killed her in that battle too. So, her family came for revenge. They were powerful and bought out all the Rossi business shares. By hook or crook, they relentlessly began to isolate the Rossis from the other packs in the world. Then, when they were at their weakest, they killed them. It still wasn't making sense. Alfonso barely escaped with his newfound mate. He came to England and set up here. Then, Rayhan asked. That's it. Rayhan shrugged. There's got to be more. Let's say this pack was the Escaras who came and sought revenge. Then what debt are they on about? I shook my head. Unless of course, the last of the Rossis, Alfonso Rossi, did something before he escaped? Or they want all the Rossis dead. Kiara murmured thoughtfully. We fell silent, pondering over her words. It did seem like they were the only viable answers. So, we need to find out exactly what happened before Alfonso Rossi left for England. Rayhan added. Yes, although D'Angelo was an insane man, from the books and journals I did read, he was loved by Alfonso. Rayhana added. So now we find out exactly what happened then, and there's only one way to do that shit. I said, frowning deeply. We go to Italy. Chiara, it was the day Enrique was leaving. The weather was cool, and although the sun was shining, it didn't match the mood of the Rossi mansion. Looking at him standing there with nothing but a small crossbody bag with some cash and a passport, broke my heart. He was a child with his life ahead of him, but seeing the empty look in his eyes, it was like he had given up on his life. Catalia stood hidden behind the front door. She didn't say anything to him or try to meet him again, he had said nothing to her. I could hear her stifled sobs as she peeped out through the crack, knowing that this was the last time she'd see him. I hated seeing her in pain too. Are you sure you don't want the phone? I asked, holding up the phone he had passed back to me. No thank you, Queen Luna. He replied, his eyes cold. He doesn't trust it. Alejandro said, crouching down before the boy. So, one of my men will take you to the airport, you get on the flight and you're in Puerto Rico. Are you sure you'll be okay once you're there? I know he wasn't keen on sending a 10-year-old alone, but everything was prepared and he'd be allowed onto the flight. Yes. Alejandro exhaled in defeat and nodded. You're a stubborn. Here's my number, if ever you need it. He handed him a black card and then held up a small velvet pouch. I heard Catalia gasp from behind me and I wondered what happened. I was about to go check on her when Alejandro stood up. Now I don't want to force you or anything, but if my girl gives you a gift, you keep it. I looked at the small pouch in his hand, realizing what he meant. I don't want it. Enrique replied coldly. You haven't got a choice, kid. Alejandro growled, opening the boy's bag and placing it inside. Keep it. I heard Catalia's footsteps retreating and looked at Enrique, who was frowning coldly at it. I will throw it away when I get to Puerto Rico. He spat, turning away from us. Goodbye. I said quietly, walking towards him. I placed my hand on his shoulder but he pushed it off and hurried towards the waiting car, getting in and slamming the car door shut after him. Enrique, let him go. Alejandro said, quietly taking hold of my wrist. I looked up into his eyes, before nodding as I watched the car drive off. I'll go to Catalia. I replied softly, pulling away. My daughter was in pain, I hated how things had ended. Hurrying inside, I went to find her, only to spot her in the lounge. Dulsanra had her arms around her, stroking her head soothingly. It's going to be okay, my little pot of cotton candy. She comforted her. I could tell she was barely able to sit up by herself. We needed to figure everything out fast. I walked over to them, and sat on the other side of Catalia, who was crying into Dulsanra's lap. I'm sorry, I whispered to her. I knew she was hurting, but I didn't know what more to say. Catalia, boys are dumb. Come on. Do you want to go play? Skyla tried, coming over to her sister. No Sky, I don't want to play. Catalia whispered, trying to stifle her sobs. Dulsanra and I exchanged looks. I stroked Catalia's hair and at the same time placed my hand on Dulsanra's, allowing myself to heal her a little. Don't cry over him, Cat. Dante added from the sofa, where he was lying down. "Don't be mean, Dante!" Skyla scolded. Dante sighed heavily. "I'm not being mean." He opened his eyes and looked at me with a thoughtful expression on his face. It unnerved me. I wasn't sure why, but my heart began racing and I felt an odd surge of fear rush through me. Why though? I stared back into his red eyes, unable to hear Catalia crying any longer. It was as if I was being sucked into a burning abyss of power. He didn't blink, just holding my gaze. My head felt like it was being crushed, the fear within me growing. But why? He was only looking at me. "Mama? Mama!" Skyla shouted, making me gasp. My eye contact with Dante broke, and it felt like I could breathe once more. "Why yet?" I asked, my heart still racing wildly. From the corner of my eye, I saw him smirk slightly, making me nervous once again. "I was saying we should have a girls' sleepover, me, you, Aunt Amari, Dulsanra, and Sienna. Oh, and Aaron can come too because he's a baby. All us girls." "I don't know. I mean, sure, if Dulsanra is up to it." I didn't want to agree, especially if she wanted the comfort of her mate at such a trying time. "I don't mind, it sounds fun," she replied, smiling happily despite the tiredness on her face. "Then I think we should get some midnight snacks ready and a movie," Maria said, entering the room, a small smile on her face. "Dante will be the only child left out then. Shall we invite him?" "No thanks," Dante added at the same time. Skyla shook her head vigorously. "See, Dante doesn't want to come. Dulsanra and Mom need to stay with their mates," Dante added, staring at the ceiling. "That's a first," Dulsanra replied with a giggle. Dante tilted his head and looked at her, pouting slightly, and to my surprise, a little blush coated his cheeks. "I'm just saying," he mumbled. Maria frowned thoughtfully and nodded. "Well, I'm sure we can have a girls' night, then Dulsanra and Kiara can go to their own rooms, and the 5 of us can stay together," she suggested. "Okay. Pajama party!" Skyla jumped excitedly. Catalia had become silent, her sobs becoming tiny sniffles, but I could tell she was in pain. I lifted her from Dulsanra's lap. The woman looked like she was going to faint at any moment. "Come on, my little angel, things will get better," I whispered, kissing the top of her head. I just hoped they would get better soon. Night had fallen, and somehow the girls' time had become a family night. So everyone was in the cinema room with blankets, pizzas, desserts, and snacks. Rayhan was holding Sienna in his lap, with his arm around Dulsanra, who was leaning against him. Maria was sitting with Aaron and Dante. Skyla was right at the front with Marcel, whilst Catalia was between Alejandro and me. We were watching a live-action movie. "This is the life," Skyla stated, taking another pizza slice. I was quite surprised at the amount she could eat. "Eating pizza and watching a movie is life?" Dante asked, skeptically. "Yes," Skyla replied confidently. "It's fun." "Fun?" Dante scoffed. "All right, no arguing." Maria intervened lightly and I was glad she spoke. From what I saw, those two did get a bit temperamental. I still worried about speaking up as I had forgotten everything. What if I said something that upset them? Remembering what had happened earlier with Dante, I glanced over at Alejandro. He was breathtakingly hot, a beast in all aspects and one that I craved. There was just something about him devouring me that made my core knot. Keep thinking like that, and I will want you all over again. I blushed when his voice came in my head. I knew there was a way to block your mate out, but I wasn't used to it and often forgot. I wouldn't mind reliving that night all over again. I replied back in a flirty tone, keeping my gaze fixed on the screen ahead. Amor mio. He growled back. I almost giggled when he readjusted his position, grabbing a sharing pack of Doritos and putting it on his lap. I smirked before glancing down at Catalia, who was staring at a chocolate bar in her hand. Want to eat it? I asked her gently. She shook her head and I didn't push it, although I was sure it would melt soon enough if she kept a hold on it. Alejandro. Dante, he's special, isn't he? Aren't all these? They are, but I mean, there's something different about him. Earlier we had a moment where our eyes locked, and I felt as if he was looking into my soul. It scared me and I don't know why. I said through the link, knowing I sounded stupid. Alejandro frowned thoughtfully. That's strange, but with Dante it's best not to ignore shit, I'll talk to him. He replied, making me feel a little relieved. Thanks. You can make it up to me after. Our eyes met, and his eyes dipped to his crotch pointedly, making my cheeks burn. With pleasure. I responded, tossing my hair. He smirked, but before he could respond, our attention fell to Catalia. And what I saw made my heart break. She was fiddling with the chocolate, trying to open the wrapper, but what devastated me was that she was trying to do it with one hand, using her mouth to help her. Her other hand rested on her lap, clenched in a ball, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. I was unable to hold back my own, pulling her into my lap and hugging my daughter tightly. The painful truth was that it was going to take a lot for her to get over the trauma that she was suffering or to come to terms with it to some extent. This enemy had committed the worst crime by targeting children, and I will never forgive him. Alejandro. It was much later. Kiera was helping Maria get the children in bed, although Ray's pups had fallen asleep whilst watching the movie. Sienna was with her parents for the night. Seeing Dulsanra's state was getting worse was making me uneasy. Maria, Marcel, and Liam would leave tomorrow, and I hoped they found the answers we needed. Liam had gone back to his pack to spend time with his mate and pups before their trip, which hopefully wouldn't last too long. He would be back here in the morning. Rayhana was going to come down in the morning to spell them so they appeared human. As for our other lead, I was going to go to Italy myself. I didn't want to leave the rest behind, but I didn't really have a choice. Scarlet was going to stay at the Blood Moon Pack and Elijah would come here. I hated that I had to leave the kids and Kiera, but Rayhan and Elijah would be here, which gave me a little reassurance. I had just settled my debt with Skyla, who said I apparently owed her £100 for using Word. I swear the little devil was robbing me. She had walked off smug, leaving me irritated. I had now come to Dante's bedroom to help him settle to bed, although he acted like he didn't need any help. Was wrong with these kids? What Kiera had said earlier was still on my mind. I planned to ask him about it. Wanna share what happened earlier? Between you and your mama. He looked at me, his red eyes calculating. It was kinda hard to explain, but it felt like he was looking into my head. Stop with the staring shit, answer me, pup. What did she say? He asked after a moment, lying back and placing his hands behind his head. The dark veins moved slightly under his skin as he stared at his overhead ceiling of the galaxy. She said she felt scared. He smirked. Why would Mama feel scared of me? His eyes snapped to me, raising an eyebrow pointedly. I frowned, my stomach sinking as a thought occurred to me. What are you saying? I'm not saying anything, I'm just asking, why would Mama fear me? Are you trying to say something else is in her head? He shrugged but didn't say anything, but I got the answer that I so did not need. You should take Mama to Italy with you. He added, closing his eyes. I frowned, leaning over and brushing his hair back. I hated how he had the weight of the world on his shoulders. I hadn't told him about Italy, but he knew. I often wondered how much he knew. Could he see the future? The outcome? Did he know what was going to happen? We once asked him and he had replied, I can't say too much or the balance will be destroyed. The haunted look in his eyes at that moment had made me promise myself never to question him about it again. I'll take her with me. I promised, standing up. Must be hard to have to deal with all that shit. You must feel tired. He smirked slightly, his eyes remaining shut. Or I feel like the game master, watching all the pieces move on the chessboard. Came his arrogant reply. I glanced back at him sharply. We both said at the same time. I smirked, shaking my head. Night. Good night, Dad. I dimmed the lights, leaving his projector to illuminate his room. I left the door open a crack so Milo could keep an eye on him through the night and made my way down the hallway. Drake. Kiera will be going with me to Italy. We leave in 2 days. Make sure her papers are ready as well. I said through the link. Got it, Alpha. Dante's words replayed in my mind as I returned to my bedroom, seeing my queen removing her earrings, a beautiful smile on her face. It killed to know she was still in the grasp of the enemy. Did they know exactly what was going on? Did I have to start hiding the truth from her? I knew the answer to that and it killed me with guilt. I had just won her trust. By hiding certain things from her, would it affect her faith in me? Closing the gap between us, I kissed her with everything I had. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.